even though devices are just a different medium, but they are still consuming stories. Even if they're watching YouTube or they're just watching whatever they watch, my daughter is sitting there. They are consuming stories.
Change.
They also are I used to look at stories as a form of entertainment. When I was growing up, my father was in the army, and sometimes we were in places where there wasn't even a school. There were no roads, no electricity, libraries. We can't even imagine in those places. So my only company used to be my mom's magazines, Manorama, Griha Shobha, Sarita, and I grew up reading those, and thankfully my sensibilities are a little more evolved. But it did contribute to how I see stories and the recognition of what is entertaining or what would delight a reader. So I did learn a lot from even those not so respectable magazines, I would say. So similarly, we should not look down upon a certain medium.
No. It's just that
It's just a difference.
Disconnect.
Yes, it's just a difference. I keep telling my daughter also that when you are watching on your screen, even though it is a story, it's not something you're creating. It's a passive reception of what is being fed to you. So I keep, at least with my daughter, I keep telling her to create her own stories or use her imagination more freely. So she has also published a short story in a US magazine. So after that, she writes for herself. She says, I don't want to get published, but at least she's creating something.
So it's been nice talking to you, and now I open it for the audience to ask her.
Got over quite quickly.
I just looked at the watch. It's about 45 minutes. Let them.
I didn't even realize that we've been talking for so long.
50 minutes actually, because it's very important that you ask her because all of you are.
And if you have any questions, please. Yes.
Like as you said, you were writing a poem when you were sad and angry. So have you any plan of writing when you're joy, cheerful, and happy?
I do write, but I never publish those because I always feel that there's something missing.
You should publish that.
Okay, I'll take your advice. Maybe I'll come up with a collection of happy poems.
Yes, because there are people who want to be happy in life.
So this book, everybody who's read it, at least nobody's given me negative feedback, but people have told me because it's based in the late 90s and it is aesthetically very Dharma, Shah Rukh Khan, late 90s. So people say that we finished it and we felt so happy. So I have written happy literature also. But my poetry I reserve for usually more, for commenting on what's happening around us.
Yeah,
Thanks.
one more thing. I just wanted to know that when you write basically on social issues or political issues or burning topics, have you ever got any trolled or any? Are you scared that these days it's become very common? So
I was thrown out of my college WhatsApp group.
What happened when?
This happened during the CA and RC movement. I was
2 years back.
Yes, I was blocked, mass reported on Facebook. I had to close down my Facebook account and start a new one, which worked out for me because the algorithm works much better now. So yes, I've faced the consequences of speaking up, but at the same time, I do not feel scared. Like I said, I will stand by my pieces. I wrote them because I really feel something about those things. And I'm not here to really put anyone down. But if something is my truth, I will speak that truth.
Do you feel that with the passage of time, one particular genre which is closer to your heart will take over and you'll be writing more in that particular genre instead of dabbling in both the things? Though I know that you are really fond of prose as well as poetry. The other thing which I want to know is, for the short stories that you write, where do you get the subject matter from? How much is it from real life situations and how much is it a creation of your imagination?
So I've written 2 short stories I'll give you the examples of. One was about Suhasini Mule, the actress who got married very late in life when she was almost 60. I was inspired to write something called Mrinalini Gets Married. So I created a character, then I gave her a backstory, and then she also gets married very late in life. And so yes, it was just an interview of Suhasini Mule which made me feel like I should create a world around this.
And you don't know her at all?
No, I've never met her. Then I was inspired by M.F. Hussain to write another short story. I would call it a short story. It's not exactly very long. Again, I reimagined how it would be to be Hussain when you have been exiled from your country and you've been barred from really working the way you want.
At that age.
Yes, and even though I'm sure he had a very good last few years because he was pampered by the Arabs, but I imagined how it would be for him to think back of his little village near Gwalior and his childhood and all the things he'll never see again. So I wrote something, a short story about that also. So now I do not really feel very enthusiastic about writing short stories. So it's either a poem or I want it to be part of the next book that I'm working on, which will be composed of shorter pieces, but it will all, when you look at it together, it will all create a bigger picture. Yes.
2 questions. One is, with the emergence of AI and ChatGPT, etc., visual artists are enraged by that. What's a poet's comment on that?
I just wrote the opinion piece I wrote for Times of India, which I hope will come out on Sunday. I wrote about exactly this. And there are many people who are very threatened by AI and these softwares which can create not just poetry, but it can create prose in the style of, you just feed into the software, or write a short story like Hitler, and it will give you something like that. It will try and give you that perspective. I have seen examples of this, and the same story with little tweaks to the input that you give the machine will come out with different outcomes. So I'm actually giving you a real example of somebody asked ChatGPT to write like Hitler. But at the end of the day, a writer's soul cannot be replicated, even though it can, the machine can be as, because the evolution of the software is such that exponentially it learns and it tries and betters itself, but however much time is spent on this, I do not think they will be able to differentiate between a first POV and a God's eye and all these little mechanics that only a human can create. So human writers unfortunately are going to be all okay and be around, and even if they are not very popular, poets for example, with a lot of people, but we are going to be around. You had a second question.
So when we talk about poetry, again, it's you express emotions. I write poetry too, but then I don't really share it because whenever I do, people complain that it's too sad. Yeah, of course, reason my therapist unlocked, but otherwise, what do you think has been the impact on diversity and inclusion, especially post-COVID? I think we're also talking about social media. For me, I feel that it's increased accessibility. What's your comment?
Of course, I agree with you. Like I said earlier, I will not comment on the, for example, Instagram poetry. There's so much of it. Technically, you should not publish your first drafts. Because there's still scope for improvement. You should let an editor work on those pieces. Number 2, once you've exposed your piece on social media, it is technically disqualified to be submitted to a journal. So all these are technical things. But apart from that, just the process of expressing yourself on social media. Diversity and inclusion, we have an expert here. So post-COVID, you were saying, yes, it gives a platform and a voice to a lot of marginalized people who would not traditionally be, they would not have access to platforms where they can say what they want. It's become very easy, but being easy also leads to instant gratification, and I see a lot of dilution in the intent of what you're trying to do. For me, the intent behind writing is one of the main ingredients of what you're trying to do, and a lot of times I see that people are just doing it for popularity, or because they know that this will be received well, or this will make them trend. So there are two sides of the coin.
Yes. I need to ask you that, like, all the poets, writers of this era, they are writing about basically the